This is Pokemon Z, a fan game made by that guy. It takes the original Kalos mythos and turns it on its side to combine the Pokemon War with the French Revolution, setting it about 300 years ago versus the 3,000 years ago that they talk about in Pokemon X and Y. With Pokemon from generations 1 through 9, brand new regional forms, and an absolutely amazing story. We're here today to see if we can beat a Hardcore Nuzlocke. Which means if a Pokemon faints, it's considered dead. The level cap is the next leader's ace, no active items can be used in battle, and we play the games on set mode. If you like this video, the sound of my voice, and this isn't your first time here, you should definitely consider hitting that subscribe button. The only way I can continue to grow is with all of your help, so anything you could do would be like super awesome. I know that I've done a few videos on this game in the past, but at the time of this recording, it was just Pokemon Day and the Legend ZA starters were just revealed. So I thought it would be a great time to come back and play this game again. No monotype runs, no nothing fancy, just a straight up Hardcore Nuzlocke so we can experience this absolutely amazing story once again. But without further ado, let's launch back into Kalos' past with Pokemon D. On our way to meet up with Professor Olivier, we suddenly stop, because apparently one of the other apprentices we're supposed to pick up missed the bus to school, so it's going to be up to us to look for this guy. But while looking for our new potential best friend, all we find is this talking snowman, and this very angry rodent. And here's when we get to choose our starters. Each of the Kalos starters has been given a brand new final form, so our choices as always are Chespin, Fennekin, and Froakie. And since Froakie is the only one I haven't used yet, we're going to go ahead and grab this little water frog, who we're going to nickname Slippy. And now it's going to be time for us to take on this ferocious rodent. I absolutely love this ice regional Bidoof. But anyways, we're going to go for a Psywave and miss, and on the following turn we can connect doing about half. Now that this thing's down into the red, we successfully are able to take down this ferocious rat, defeating it. But it turns out that this magical snowman isn't from Arendelle. It's actually a dude named Crisanto, who reveals that he is the second apprentice of Professor Olivier, and just the guy we're supposed to pick up. And when he got attacked by that Bidoof, I don't know why he couldn't pick up a Pokeball and do something about it, but thanks for letting me choose my starter first. But with that little battle intro, Pokemon Z has officially begun. Once Crisanto and I get to Professor Olivier's lab, she is nowhere to be found. But I did notice a very familiar F on the door when we entered, which is the cool little bit of world building. Anywho, the Grimer that forms when you fuse up the 3 rocket starters in Infinite Fusion just literally gets up and walks away. Now enter Professor, who seems completely unconcerned with the fact that she created literal life. What's more important is making sure that Crisanto chooses his starter Pokemon. So after he makes literally the most important decision of his life, he wants us to head outside and have a Pokemon battle, so we can figure out if we know what we're doing. Which means now it's time for us to take on Crisanto in our first ever rival battle. He starts out with Fennekin and we send in Slippy. We're gonna go for a bubble, doing about 2/3 as an Ember does like nothing, so we can take it down after one more bubble. And we defeat the bard known as Crisanto. And with that battle complete, Professor Olivier has full confidence that we're able to use Pokemon, because we just did it. But it turns out Crisanto is not the only apprentice that failed to come here. We have to go to the nearby town and get the third and final one, which makes sense, because there's 3 starter Pokemon. So after handing us our balls and a Dex Nav, it's time for us to head to Vinyl Town.
Look at those Pokemon go. They sure are giving it their all, stomping those grapes. Such a pleasure to watch. I wonder if they could stomp on me too sometime. Oh!
Over on Route 1, we're gonna grab ourselves a Bidoof, who we're gonna nickname Peppy. In Vinyl Town, we're gonna grab ourselves a Mankey, who we're gonna nickname Pigma. We meet up with Professor Olivier and Crisanto over in Vinyl Town, where we meet this miraculous mustache and his daughter, Malia, the third and final apprentice, who was too good to get out of bed and come see us. Professor Olivier and Chateau Lanto continue to talk about some logistical things, but I cannot stop staring at this dude's glorious mustache and head of hair. But I snap out of my trance just in time for the professor to let us know what we're all doing here. And we're here to compete in something called the Poketour. If we can defeat the 12 regions around Kalos as well as the king, he will grant us any one wish. Which honestly sounds like a pretty sweet deal to me. And my one wish, to have a mustache and head of hair as glorious as Mr. Merlot over here. But with our Pokedex in hand, our journey has officially begun. In the catacombs under Mustache Merlot's home, we find a Woobat, who we're gonna nickname Bronto Bert. After grabbing our fishing rod, I'm gonna backtrack and fish up a Krabby, who we're gonna nickname Bubble. And we're gonna grab ourselves a Ninarin male over on Route 2, who we're gonna nickname Nabbit. Soon after, we find Malia and Crisanto, who just has like the literal worst throwing arm you've ever seen. But Malia doesn't need any Pokeballs. She uses her magic sparkle fingers on this Floette, and it just decides to join her and become her best friend, which is absolutely wild. But I guess it's gonna be time for us to take on Malia in our first rival battle. He starts off with Flabebe and we send in Bronto Bert. We're gonna go for a Gust doing a bit as a Vine Whip does like nothing. And after we go for 2 more, we can successfully take down the Flabebe, which is gonna lead into Chespin. So going for a Gust in the Chespin, we do about 2/3 and 1 more takes it out. And we defeat Malia in our second rival battle. In Grisella Cave, we're gonna grab ourselves a Whismur, who we're gonna nickname Walkie. In Grisella City, we're gonna grab ourselves a Flabebe, who we're gonna nickname Dandy. After getting to Grisella City, we meet up with Malia, who's having a meeting with the local regent Canola. She lets us know that she's doing very important cop business and she won't be able to allow us to challenge her for her gym badge. Not until we find some rich lady's lost dog. So I guess it's gonna be up to Malia and I to look for this dog, so that way we can get our first badge. On Route 3, we're gonna grab ourselves a Krogunk, who we're gonna nickname Ward. While searching for the lost puppy, Malia and I run into these 2 dudes that look like plague doctors. And if that doesn't scream 18th century evil scientist, I don't know what does. But after beating them up because we don't know what Team Azoth is, they decide to leave. And in the distance, we see an Assassin's Creed assassin with an Absol, which, as everybody knows, Absol is a sign of good luck. So what could possibly go wrong? We finally meet up with the doggo that we've been tasked to locate inside of Acrylic Town. The frou-frou appears to have a golden sheen about it, but that's not what shiny frou-frous look like. And not even Melia's magical sparkle fingers can stop this onslaught of dog. So I guess it's gonna be up to us to stop it. We send in Bronto, Bert, and Peppy. The frou-frou is gonna go for a tail whip, and we're gonna go for a Gust followed by a powdered snow. And I'm gonna swap out, sending in Pigma, who can take a bite, and then we go for another Gust. The frou-frou goes for another tail whip on the following turn, lowering our defenses, and Bronto Bert can go for a Gust, getting it down just below half, and a low kick takes out the frou-frou. After the battle, enter the Assassin's Creed assassin and his Absol. The man introduces himself as Mirra and reveals that he is a cleric of the Order of the Eternal Tree. And I don't know what that is, but it sounds very impressive. He's also tasked with hunting down the monsters of Team Azoth, who apparently are the ones that got this dog sick in the first place. He lets us know that there's only one thing left to do, and asks us to please turn around, so Absol can do what it needs to. And with tears in his eyes, he lets us know that we're free to go take on the first gym. And in Acrylic Town, we're gonna find ourselves a regional Pikachu, who we're gonna nickname Mouser. After slapping a Soothe Bell on Bronto Bird and running around like a whole bunch, it's gonna go ahead and evolve into a Swoobat. And now it's time for us to take on Canola and her fight boys. She starts off by sending in Krogunk and we send in Bronto Bird. It's gonna go for a Fang Out because of course it is, and we're gonna get flinched. But on the following turn, we can go for a ×4 super effective Confusion, grabbing the KO, which leads into Metatite. And now we can go for a Gust on it, grabbing the KO on it as well. Her regional Kricketune comes in last. And we can go for a Confusion once again, grabbing a critical hit and an Oko. And I never thought I'd ever say this, but Swoobat, OP here, everybody. While fighting trainers over on Route 4, Nabbit is going to go ahead and evolve into a Nidorino. On Route 4, we're going to grab ourselves a Time Pole, who we're going to nickname Glenn. Next up to evolve is going to be Slippy into a Frogadier, whose new secondary typing in this version of the game is actually Psychic. And in the Hillside Forest, we grab a Pansage, who we're going to nickname Candy. After fighting our way through the Hillside Forest, we run into a couple of Azoth grunts and this pretty lady. And they're apparently trying to forcefully extract the pollen from these Morlil. The monsters. Don't they know all they have to do is tickle their chins? Now enter Crisanto, who is horrified to see the abuse these Morlil are going through. And after recently multiclassing into Paladin, he will not allow these injustices to stand. This third unmasked individual identifies herself as Nebula, the chief scientist for Team Azoth. And since we ruined her pollen collecting plans, it looks like she's gonna have to beat us off, up, instead of those poor innocent fairy flowers. Nebula starts off with a weaving bell and I send in Bronto Bird. I'm gonna go for a confusion because like duh, why wouldn't I, and we can grab the Yoko. Next out comes Duo Scion. And I absolutely love the regional variant on this thing, and we're gonna do about a third with a confusion as it goes for an acid armor. On the following turn, we're gonna go for another confusion, bringing it down quite low as it goes for a heart stamp. It heals up a little bit with its Oranberry, and we can go for another confusion, bringing it down super low. And now that we're down to about half, she's gonna heal up with a super potion, and we can go for another 2 confusions as we get knocked down to 19, healing up with our own berry. But one more takes it down. Out next is Bronzor. And I'm gonna go for an assurance on this thing, doing about a quarter, as it goes for an extra sentry, doing like nothing. We're gonna keep on going for assurances, getting it down a little bit, as it then goes for a gyro ball, getting a decent hit on us. With the third one, it is down wicked low, and a gyro ball gets us down to just 4. But we can successfully KO the Bronzor and defeat Nebula. And if anybody's gonna be beating the pollen out of Crisanto, it's gonna be me. And after the battle, Dandy is going to evolve into a Floette. In Collage Town, I'm gonna grab myself a Timber, who we're gonna name DK. We find Crisanto in the middle of town playing beautiful music with his Jigglypuff, but when he notices that all the Pokemon and townspeople around him have fallen into a deep, deep slumber, he is overcome with an indomitable desire to start smiting. And it looks like he plans on starting with us. Crisanto starts off by sending in Jigglypuff, and I send in Nabbit. I'm gonna go for a Poison Tail right away on the Jigglypuff, and we can score a massive hit and the KO. Next out comes Cubone. Then I'm gonna swap out a Nabbit and send in Slippy as he goes for a Bone Club, getting a pretty big hit on us, but we can then go for a Water Pulse and pick up the Yoko. Next out comes Braxian. And afraid of an electric move, we're gonna swap out into Pigma as he goes for a Thunder Shock. He's gonna go for another Thunder Shock, bringing me down to 10 as I go for a Rock Tomb, doing about half. I know it's risky, but I have to stay in, going for another Rock Tomb, bringing it down super low. And he then goes for a Rock Smash, KOing Pigma. And I was afraid of that, but I didn't know what else to do, so let's send in Slippy, where we can go for a Water Pulse, taking down the Braxian. And with that, we defeat Crisanto, but unfortunately, we lost our little piggy. After the battle, Crisanto can see that everybody in the town has awoken, and now they're talking to a couple of Team Azoth grunts. The Azoth grunts are giving a rousing speech about how the noble class of Kalos doesn't care about them. But Team Azoth does. And with their science, they're going to be able to make Kalos great again. So great, in fact, that they call this random old lady from the audience and have her chug this mysterious potion. And after chugging it, it gives her the ability to jump over houses. And that's just a taste of what Team Azoth has to offer. The Azoth grunts and the common folk then begin to chant a name. Alka. And Crisanto and I have no idea who that is, and we should probably check in with the professor. To replace our fallen pig, we're going to add Peppy back into the party and evolve it into a barrel. On Route 5, we're going to grab ourselves a Tinkatink, who we're going to nickname Waddle Dee. We meet up with Malia over in the Sanctuary of the Kings, where she seems fixated on a statue of King Aster Zephyr, the current ruler of Kalos. I then try to ask her why she's so interested in the king, and she gets super flustered and declares that maybe we should just Pokemon battle instead of talk about politics. She starts off with Floette, and we send in Nabbit. I'm gonna go for a Poison Tail right away, scoring a massive hit on the Floette as it goes for an Aqua Friga, lowering my attack. After that, Malia heals up with a Super Potion, and we can go for another Poison Tail. And with another Poison Tail, we can successfully bring down Floette. Next up is Quilladin. And I'm not sure if it has Bulldoze yet, but I'm not gonna wait to find out, and we set into Bronto Burt as he goes for a Mud Shot. On the following turn, I'm going to go for an Air Cutter, bringing him down quite low as it goes for a Bite, scoring a massive hit. On the following turn, one more Air Cutter takes down the Quilladin. This is going to lead into Muna. And I'm going to swap out a Bronto Burt and send in Slippy as it goes for a Shock Wave, scoring a pretty big hit on us. So let's swap out Slippy and send in Dandy so we can tank that Shockwave pretty well. I'm going to set up a Wish just in case as the Muna goes for a Confusion on the following turn, and we can then go for a Ferry when doing a bit of damage. After taking another Shockwave, we're going to heal back up to full with our Wish, and then fire off another Fairy Wind as a confusion does a bit to us. Now that this thing is down into the red, one more Fairy Wind takes down the Muna. And we defeat Malia. After the battle ends, Malia tells us that she feels bad for King Zephyr because he's all alone after his family passed away nearly 20 years ago. And it must be super hard to be all by yourself. But then we hear a crash coming from our left. And when we investigate, we find that this old man has fallen off of his goat and broken his ankle. But with the power of wishes, the Floette restores the old man's ankle. And because of that, he decides to invite us to a fancy party that he's having at his house. And who am I to say no to a fancy party? In Oil Town, I'm going to grab a Pidove. And we're going to add Birdo to the party right away, evolving it into a Tranquil. And now it's time for us to take on Hisopo and his ghastly ghouls. Hisopo starts off with Lampet and we send in Nabbit. I'm going to go for Thieves to steal this thing's Eviolite, doing about half as it goes for a Hex, doing a good amount to us. He then swaps out, sending in Misdrevious, where we can go for a Thief, doing about a third. After that, it's going to go for a Smoochy Kiss on us, healing up just a bit, but luckily it gets poisoned. We follow up with a Poison Tail, getting it down quite low. Hisopo then heals up with a Super Potion, and we can go for another Poison Tail, and now it's just below half. It then goes for another Smoochy Kiss, and now we're down below half as well as we go for another Poison Tail, which is not going to quite bring it down low enough. And after going for an Icy Wind, lowering our speed, we can go for one more Poison Tail, taking it out. Cofagrigus comes in next, and I love this regional form. Anywho, we're going to swap out and send in Poochie, so we can get the Intimidate off on this thing, and it goes for a Shadow Claw. We're then going to go for an Ember, doing about a third as it goes for a Nightshade. We're going to heal up a bit with our Berry after that and go for another Ember, getting it down quite low as another Shadow Claw gets it down just below half. And now that this thing is in the red, one more Shadow Claw brings our Doggo down to 2. But we can take it down after one more Ember. This leads back into Lampent, who I assume is going to go for a Hex, so we'll swap out into Birdo, as it does indeed. We can then go for an Air Cutter, getting it down quite low as it goes for a Mystical Fire, scoring a massive hit. But luckily we don't miss, and one more takes it out. We defeat Hisopo, earning our second badge. After getting our second badge, we meet up with all of our friends just outside the gym, where apparently Professor Olivier has also been invited to the fancy party, which means that Crisanto's the only one missing out. But Professor Olivier lets him know, don't worry, you can be my +1. To which Crisanto is overcome with so much emotion, he falls asleep while standing up. Because as we figured out with Nebula earlier, he can't talk to girls. Malia, super excited because she's never had a big sister or a mom before, drags the professor off to get ready, and Crisanto and I are gonna go get a drink while we wait. While waiting for Malia and the professor, Crisanto talk about exactly how dates work. He asks us things like, what are you supposed to do with your hands? When is it appropriate to tell them that you're in love with them? And if I could teach him the move. You know the one. Will you yawn and put your arm around their shoulder? If he can master that, surely the professor will fall in love with him. But before I can answer any of those questions, the girls saunter on over and Crisanto immediately blurts out that he loves Professor Olivier. Moving on, the professor lets us know that there is going to be a super secret plan for us while we're attending this fancy party. Apparently, this fancy party has a super secret underground vault, and in that super secret underground vault, all sorts of really valuable stuff, including a golden rock that Professor Olivier needs for her research. So after we wine and dine and enjoy the entertainment, the three of us need to slip away and get that super cool rock for her. She then winks at Crisanto, saying maybe it could even be considered an engagement gift. Crisanto's super hesitant because he's a paladin and therefore hates crime. But then he remembers that he's also a bard, and we all know bards will do anything in the name of love. And before attending that fancy party, we're gonna grab a Pommy, who we're gonna nickname Knuckles. Just before dinner, we are introduced to the richest, most philanthropic, most awesome man in the entire Kalos region, Lanto. This 100% definitely not a vampire guy. And with how much Crisanto is gushing all this guy, you'd think he was his date and not Professor Olivier. Crisanto has always wanted to personally thank Lanto. It was because of his scholarship programs that he was able to attend the Pokemon Academy, and without Lanto, he wouldn't be here today. And Lanto then walks up to Crisanto, grabs one of his bulging biceps, and asks if he studied something with sports, because he has a very athletic constitution. But before the two of them can get a room, we need to have dinner. Mustache, Merlot, Lanto, and the professor then talk about all of the political stuff that's been going on throughout Kalos, and how Team Azoth has been stirring up trouble for the crown. Because of Lanto's deep connections, Mustache Merlot asks if Lanto has ever heard of someone named Alka before, to which he says he definitely 100% has never heard that name before. And you know what? I don't know what it is about this guy, but I believe him. And now that dinner's over, let's go find that super secret underground vault. In the Chateau's basement, we're gonna grab a Grimer. And after finding the super secret underground vault, apparently, it's locked with a super secret vault key. And that vault key, you need to be a royal to go in here. But we don't have any of those. So I guess this is where our journey ends. Except maybe not. Because other than Melia's magic sparkle finger, she has another secret. The fact that she is King Aster Zephyr's daughter. And that's why she was so obsessed with that statue we saw earlier. But there's no time to explain. We need to get in there and get that rock. But not before, just like every bard in existence, Crisanto needs to read some smut written by Master Sycamore about human-Pokemon relations. But before we can take this golden rock, enter Mirra, the cleric of the Order of the Eternal Tree, who I hope is covered in dirt. He wants to know how he managed to get past this vault's defenses. He had to scope out the sewers for weeks to figure it out, and we're not covered in any poopy water. He then lets us know that that golden rock is the crystallized sap of the Eternal Tree. And since he's from the Order of the Eternal Tree, he'll be taking it. So I guess there's only one thing to do. We're gonna have to Pokemon battle for it. Mirra starts off with Mawile and we send in Nabbit. I'm immediately going to swap out and send in Poochie to get the Intimidate off on this thing as it goes for a Thunderfang, which misses. I'm then going to go for a Flame Burst on this thing, grabbing a huge hit, getting it down super low as it goes for a Thunderfang. Mirra then uses his first Super Potion, and we can go for one more Flame Burst, taking it down. Next out comes Kadabra, who's going to outspeed us with a Psybeam, scoring a massive hit, and we go for a Bite, and we can pick up the Oko, which is going to lead into Absol. Then I'm going to swap out, and we're going to send in Nabbit as it goes for an Aerial Ace. Luckily, the Poison Point poisons it. It then goes for another Aerial Ace, getting me down below half, and we go for a Rock Smash, getting a pretty big hit in, lowering its defense. Assuming another Aerial Ace, I'm going to swap out and send in Birdo, as this time it goes for a Bite, doing a crazy amount of damage. Mirra then heals up with a Super Potion, and I waste my time going for a Detect. It's then going to go for another Bite, taking down Birdo. We're then going to send in Poochie so I can get the Intimidate off on this thing, before swapping Poochie out and sending in Peppy as it goes for a Bite, scoring a huge critical hit. And on the following turn, it goes for an Aerial Ace, getting a good hit in, but we go for a massive Headbutt, KOing it thanks to our spiffy Scarf, and we defeat Mirra. And by the transitive rules of Pokemon battle, we get to keep the sap of the Eternal Tree, whatever that means. But Mirra warns us that he'll be keeping an eye on us, because the power contained in the sap would be capable of creating a weapon of untold destruction. After catching back up with the professor, she lets us know that our next stop should be Santalune City, because that's where the Alchemy Academy is, and they'll have all the tools necessary for her to do her research. Plus, it'll be the next stop on our Poketour for our third badge, which sounds like a win-win to me. We're then going to add Knuckles into our party and first evolve it into a Palmo, and then one more time right away into a Pawmot. On Route 6, we're going to grab a Stantler, who we're going to nickname Bam. In the Gloomy Cave, we're going to grab a Geodude, who we're going to nickname Thwomp. We found a Moonstone, so we're going to give that to Nabbit right away so it can evolve into Nidoking. In Profane Town, we're going to grab a Stunfisk, who we're going to nickname Blooper. Once we get to Profane Town, we see a couple of Azoth grunts run off into the swamp, and Crisanto can feel his smite hand twitching. We need to follow those villains into the swamp and stop them before they do anything too dastardly. But just before Malia agrees, she sees the visage of a scary old lady before she then fades back away. What could this possibly mean for our princess? Perhaps we'll find out a little later. We're gonna grab ourselves a Clodsire in the Profane Swamp, who we're gonna nickname Wario. After searching around in the swamp for like 3 hours, Crisanto and Malia decide that maybe we should make camp for the night. And this is when Malia decides to tell us the rest of her super sad backstory. When the queen was pregnant with Malia, the two of them were on a trip, and their carriage fell off the side of a cliff. There were no survivors, save the two of them. So after wandering the forest, they eventually came upon an old woman. The king begged her to allow them to stay, and in return he would grant her any one wish. To which she agreed. But when the time came and Malia was born, the mysterious old woman said it was time to pay up. She wanted the baby. To which King Aster obviously refused because that's ridiculous. And then that's when this old lady revealed that she wasn't just any ordinary old lady. She was a crone hag witch lady, and she put a curse on the Zafra family. A few short years later, the queen passed away. And afraid that his daughter would share the same fate, King Aster gave Malia to Mustache Merlot, and through him, she would learn proper mustache and hair maintenance. But this meant that the king was left all by himself. In this deep depression has lasted nearly 20 years. Malia is hoping that once she completes her Pokator, her one wish could be to hang out with her daddy. We eventually catch up with the two Team Azoth goons, and after beating them up, we find what they've been looking for, this Clodsire. But they're about as good as beating the toxin out of a Clodsire as they are in beating the pollen out of a Morlul, which is to say, not very good. But Malia shows them how it's done. And using her special sparkle fingers, the Clodsire produces a gigantic sludge wave, forcing us all outside the cave. A third Team Azoth grunt enters to let the other two know that the cops are after them, and they need to get the heck out of here, and they need to go literally anywhere besides Profane Town. Back in Profane Town, Mustache Merlot and the rest of the Musketeers have gathered the townsfolk around, accusing them of harboring criminals from Team Azoth. I then let Mustache Merlot know that that is absolutely ridiculous. There's absolutely no way that this village is harboring any of those villains. So why the heck did those two idiots come back here? Mustache Merlot strokes his mustache gloriously. If I was willing to lie to his face about bad dudes being here and that the townspeople aren't involved, clearly that must mean I'm involved and I'm the baddie. Merlot starts off with Go-Go and I send in Peppy. It goes for a bulldoze on us, doing a bit of damage, lowering our crappy speed, and I'm gonna go for a little surfboard ice thing, grabbing ourselves the Oko. Next up comes Kingler, who's gonna outspeed us with a stomp, and we can go for a big ol' silk boosted headbutt, getting it down just below half. Mustache then heals up and we go for another headbutt, doing just about half. And after getting stomped on, we can go for another headbutt, getting it low. We're then gonna swap out Peppy and send in Knuckles as Mustache heals up again. We're then gonna go for a spark, taking it out in one. This leads into Chevalier. A fantastic new Charum evolution, and check out the mustache on this guy. I'm gonna go for a bulldoze on it, that way I can lower its speed, and the Chevalier goes for an extra sensory, scoring a massive hit and KOing Knuckles immediately. Okay, so I guess I'll send in Bronto Burt and go for an air cutter, taking the Chevalier out. And I can't believe we already lost Knuckles. But we beat this mustache. After the battle, Malia and Crisanto meet back up with us in town, that way we can clear up this entire mess. And while trying to explain the situation to him, the townsfolk begin to chant. Alka, and a mysterious carriage approaches. And out of that carriage, a gigantic, glorious woman, purple Pokeball in hand, not quite understanding how shirts work, with piercing red eyes. This is Alka. Rotom fan just to her right, blowing her luscious hair in the wind, barely keeping that toga going. When the Musketeers go to arrest her, she summons her mighty Grimmsnarl, absolutely annihilating them, one shot apiece. She then picks up Mustache Merlot, Okoing him all by herself, and as quickly as Alka came, her and her mighty Grimmsnarl leave. On Route 7 North, we grab a Charcadet, who we're gonna nickname Zero. In the Shining Cave, we're gonna grab ourselves a Tynamo, who we're gonna nickname Unagi. We catch up with Mirra just outside of Santalune City, and he's hunted down a couple of Azoth grunts. And as he tells Absol to finish them, they run off. Mirra steps a little uncomfortably close to me. Then, while staring deeply, unwaveringly in our eyes, he ties a little spool of string around our finger. Now moving closer to our ear, he tells us that we are now in alliance, before he just simply walks away. And on Route 7 South, we're gonna grab a Vulpix, who we're gonna nickname McCloud. In Santalune City, we're gonna grab ourselves a Lillipup, who we're gonna nickname Slider. After reaching the Santalune City Alchemy Academy, we meet up with Professor Olivier, and apparently her mentor and the administrator of the Alchemy Academy, Professor Sapine, has suddenly passed away. Which is unfortunate not only because he was her friend, but also because he was the regent of Santalune City. So what the heck are we gonna do now? Now enter Lanto. Totally not suspicious that he's here at the Alchemy Academy, and he lets us know that the acting administrator of the Alchemy Academy is none other than Wolfram, one of Olivier's former classmates. So I think it's about time that we paid Wolfram a visit. So we do just that. Heading over to the office of the acting administrator of the Alchemy Academy, we meet up with Wolfram, the Nepo baby who's apparently super bad at alchemy. So why the heck are you the administrator? He lets us know that Sapine was working on some very important research before his death over at his lab to the south. And if we could go pick up those documents for him, because not only is he a bad alchemist, he's also a bad Pokemon trainer, he'd be happy to just give us the badge. And full access to the Alchemy Academy's research center, so Olivier can do whatever experiments she needs to do on the Eternal Tree Sap. So I guess that's that. Let's head over to the lab. Over on Storm Hill, we're gonna grab an Electabuzz, who we're gonna nickname Sparky. And in the workshop, we're gonna grab a regional Porygon, who we're gonna nickname Rob. In Sapine's lab, we find his robot son, named simply F3. Apparently, in his old age, Sapine got super lonely, so he took a regular automaton and Pinocchio'd it. And F3 has always longed to see the world, so he decides that he'll be the one to deliver the plans back to Wolfram for us. And it's definitely a good idea to let a guy who's literally never left a basement to go outside and do stuff on his own. Told you it was a good idea, so we get back to the acting administrator of the Alchemy Academy's office, where apparently he's actually a part of Team Azoth. And F3, not understanding how literally anything works, is easily captured. So I guess now it's going to be time for us to face off against Wolfram and his bug boys. Wolfram starts off with Ariados, and I send in Bronto Bird. I'm going to go for a Calm Mind, but not before I get Shadow Sneaked for nearly half, which is a little unfortunate, but let's go ahead and get that going. On the following turn, it doesn't go for a Shadow Sneak for reasons I can't possibly comprehend, and we can take it down with an Air Slash. Next out comes Araquanid, and once again we can go for another +1 Air Slash, taking Araquanid down in 1 as well. Next out comes Galvantula, and I'm not sure if +1's enough to tank a Discharge, so we swap out and he goes for a Giga Drain, which is bonkers. On the following turn, it goes for another Giga Drain, doing a little bit of chip damage to us, and we're going to go for a Yawn. And after tanking another Giga Drain, I'm going to go for an Amnesia as this thing falls asleep. Now I'm going to start punching it with Poison, first doing about half, and it immediately wakes up, which is a little frustrating, and with another Poison Jab, it's going to activate its berry. Then it throws down a Sticky Web, gets poisoned, goes down. Which means we defeat Wolfram. But Wolfram's life of crime will not end here. He declares Smoke Bomb and disappears, departs unknown. F3 then lets us know that while he was in that basement by himself, he became an excellent Pokemon trainer. And since technically he's Sapine's son, that means he is now the acting regent. So we can go get our badge, which is excellent news. Needing to change up our party first, we're going to add Thwomp and evolve it right away into a Grappler. We're then going to add Mouser to the party and give them a Thunderstone after getting to the level cap, evolving into Raichu. And now, it's time for us to take on F3 and his electric Pokemon. F3 starts off with Porygon and we send in Wario. My plan here is to put this thing to sleep and then set up some Toxic Spikes, and it goes for a Tri-Attack, doing barely anything to us. And after hitting us with another Tri-Attack, we can start laying down the spikes as it falls asleep. With the spikes down, we can then start going for Amnesias to boost up our special defense. And after getting to +6, it goes for a Psybeam, activating our weakness policy. So now that it hits us with another Tri-Attack, it's doing literally nothing, but it does unfortunately paralyze us. It goes for a Recover, but we manage to get the poison off, which is wonderful. He then heals up with a Hyper Potion, and we can continue going for Poison Jabs as we tank another Tri-Attack, taking only 4. Porygon goes down as Porygon 2 comes in, getting Toxic. It goes for a Shadow Ball, doing nothing, and we score a pretty big hit with a Poison Jab while tanking another Tri-Attack. Unfortunately, we're paralyzed here, and he heals up with another Hyper Potion, but the poison's going to start ticking up, and even though he scores a crit on a Shadow Ball, it only does 47, and Porygon 2 goes down, which leads into Porygon Z, who's also going to get poisoned. It's going to launch a Tri-Attack, getting me down to 36, and I think I can tank one more as long as it's not a crit, and fortunately it doesn't crit, and we take it down, defeating F3. We're now going to give Poochie a Firestone, evolving it into Arcanine. On Route 8, we're going to grab a Krylia, who we're going to nickname Rosalina. We find Crisanto playing beautiful music with his Wigglytuff just outside of Chateau Lanto. He's probably trying to get his senpai to notice him, but we're the first ones that do notice him. So he figures while he's waiting for Lanto to notice him, maybe we should have another Pokemon battle. Maybe it'll be rousing enough to get Lanto out here and say hi to him. Crisanto sends in Wigglytuff and we send in Wario. After taking a Hyper Voice, we're going to go for a Yawn before an Icy Wind activates our weakness policy and it falls asleep. After laying down 2 layers of Toxic Spikes, we are going to go ahead and go for a Poison Jab, scoring the KO. Marowak comes in next, and I can't hit this thing and I get Bulldoze, which is incredibly unfortunate. Not really having much of a choice here because Ground is an incredible weakness for my party, I'm going to send in Poochie. It then goes for a Gyro Ball, doing like nothing. We can follow up with a Fire Fang, getting the Oko on Marowak. Next out comes Braixen, who's gonna get poisoned right away. I can then go for a Crunch on this thing, doing just over half, as it goes for a Thunder Fang, doing a bit to me. It then heals up with its Citrus Berry, but the poison has taken hold. Now going for another Crunch, we can get it down super low, as it goes for a Nuzzle, paralyzing us, but the poison finishes off Braixen. Pligu comes in as his final Pokemon, who's also gonna get poisoned. It goes for a Mud Shot right away, doing some damage to us, dropping our already low speed, and we can go for a Crunch, scoring a massive critical hit. Assuming another Mud Shot, we swap out into Bronto Burt as Crisanto heals up. I'm then going to go for a Calm Mind as it decides to go for a Dragon Breath. And at +1, we're going to go for an Air Slash, getting it quite low as we get crit with another Dragon Breath. And afraid now that we're slower, I'm going to swap out and Crisanto heals up again. Going for a Stab Poison Tail with Nabbit, we're going to do just over 50% as it goes for another Dragon Breath, doing a bit of damage to us. And with one more Poison Tail, we take down the Sliggoo. And we defeat Crisanto. That battle is exactly what Lanto needed to come out of Chateau Lanto. Crisanto, overcome with joy at seeing his senpai's face, becomes even more excited when Lanto suggests that we come inside for dinner. And since this guy's definitely not some kind of weird vampire, dinner sounds great. What's more, apparently Professor Olivier is already inside waiting for us. What luck! We'll be able to get nearly the whole party together. But once we get in there, Professor Olivier is nowhere to be found. And oh, did I say she was here? I must have been mistaken. She was here earlier. Now drink these incredibly red cups of wine. I'll be right back. As Crisanto and I debate whether or not this is blood or wine, we see a Team Azoth grunt disappear into the wall. But we must have been seeing things. There's no way that here inside of Chateau Lanto there'd be the bad guys. But after pressing the glowing red eyes on this Gallade statue, it reveals a super secret underground base. But clearly there must be some other explanation for this. After fighting our way through Team Azoth's super secret underground base, we find Nebula once again. And somehow they've acquired the sap of the Eternal Tree. And Team Azoth's plans are starting to come together for us. Nebula then says that she's about to show us just a taste of the power that Team Azoth holds. Once the grunt activates the machine, the life force of this Slowpoke is transferred into the Psyduck, creating the first ever Zomduck. And now with power over life and death itself, Team Azoth's true plans start to form. But Nebula can't let us leave here alive. I forgot this was the double battle. Anyways, Bronzong and Victory Bell comes in and we choose Wigglytuff and Poochie. I'm going to go for a Fire Fang on Victory Bell right away, and we can quickly pick up the Oko. Wigglytuff then goes for a Calm Mind for reasons I can't possibly comprehend. And Bronzong's going to go for a Gyro Ball, doing a bit of damage to Wigglytuff. Weavile's up next, who's going to go for an Ice Punch on us, doing like nothing, and we can go for a Fire Fang on Weavile, taking it down as well. Wigglytuff then smooches this big ol' gong for minimal damage, and then it's going to go for a Zen Headbutt on the Wigglytuff, leading into Renucleus. I'm going to go for a Crunch on the Renucleus, doing about 2/3, but unfortunately this thing has a Rocky Helmet, as then we follow up with a Side Shot, getting it down just a bit. Bronzong tries to go for a Toxic, but it doesn't work, but a Poison Jab is enough to take down the Duff. Braixen is out next, and I'm going to go for another Crunch on this thing, successfully taking it down. Braixen can follow up with a Fire Punch, but this thing is an Aqua Berry, so it doesn't do a whole heck of a lot of damage. But that's perfect for me, because without that Aqua Berry, I can now go for a Fire Fang, taking out Bronzong. And we defeat Nebula. But at this point, it doesn't matter. Nebula's experiment was already a complete success, and she's moving on to the next phase of Team Azoth's plan. And if we don't like it, we can take it up with our bosses. Moving into Lanto's super secret underground throne room, because of course he has one of those, we find Professor Olivier chained to the wall. And Lanto reveals that he has been Team Azoth's benefactor this entire time. He's not a goodie, he's a baddie. But Lanto's not the only one here in Chateau Lanto. Enter Alka. Rotom fan just to her right, blowing her luscious hair in the wind. Crisanto completely unable to form any words because that toga is not an entire shirt. Alka commands Lanto to let Professor Olivier down, and they lay out Team Azoth's plan for us. They plan to end the cycle of life and death forever. No new people born, nobody now die. Because right now is the best time for people. All we need to do is let them do their plan. And once the world is filled with almost immortal vampires, we will usher in a golden age of awesomeness. But now that we know Team Azoth's super secret awesome plan, Lanto can't let us leave. He's gonna send in a Frostlass and we send in Wario. I'm gonna do what we've been doing all along. I'm gonna try to put this thing to sleep and then stack up. It lays down 2 spikes before I go for an Amnesia just in case it went for an Ice Beam, but it didn't, so let's lay down some Toxic Spikes now that it is asleep. And with 2 layers of spikes down, we can start stacking up more Amnesias, getting to +4, and then up to +6. As it continues to just lay down spikes, it does eventually go for a Shadow Ball, critting me, which is a little rude, and we're going to go for a Poison Jab, doing like nothing. Now it goes for a Frost Breath, which is obviously going to crit, but it will also activate Weakness Policy. So we go for another Poison Jab, doing a pretty good hit. But this is where I messed up because I completely forgot the Frost Breath always crits. I thought it had Ice Beam, so let's swap out into Peppy as it goes for a Frost Breath on us. It then goes for a Destiny Bomb, which is fine because all I did was yawn at it. As Lanto heals up, I can go for a couple Amnesias as it falls asleep. And I know it's going to be not very effective, but I think I would much rather not die as it goes for another Destiny Bond, and we can go for another Surfboard. Then going for another Surfboard, we get it down quite low as it continues going for Destiny Bonds. Lanto heals up with another Hyper Potion, and I'm going to yawn it again before getting up to +6 with our Amnesias, so now we're taking like no damage. Hopefully I can KO this thing while it's sleeping as we continue to increase our speed with all of our Ice Skating. It wakes up going for another Frost Breath, and I'm going to put it back to sleep again because I'm assuming it's going to start going for more Destiny Bonds. And I call it as it continues until it eventually falls asleep. And we can then successfully take down Frostlass. Next out comes Lilligant, and fortunately we poison it, but unfortunately I see a fire move in our future, so let's swap out into Poochie, taking a bit of damage from the spikes, getting an Intimidate as it goes for a Giga Drain. Then goes for a frickin' Power Gem. No, Poochie! So let's send in Nabbit. It's going to go for a Quiver Dance, which is kind of scary, but fortunately I punch things for a living, so we're going to go for a Poison Tail on Lilligant, grabbing a crit and the KO. Next out comes Gardevoir. And I know it has Psyshock, but I also know I'm faster, so going for a Poison Tail, we do a lot of damage. And it's going to go for a super effective Psyshock, and unfortunately it's not enough. And Nabbit goes down. So let's send in Brunto Burt. I'm going to go for a Calm Mind on the first turn, and it's going to go for a Calm Mind as well, but that's fine because it's poisoned. So it's going to go down. His final Pokemon, Perugly, comes in. I'm going to go for an Air Slash on this fat cat, scoring a massive hit as it goes for a Body Slam, doing just about 50% to us. But the poison takes care of that. Perugly goes down, and we defeat Lanto. So by the rules of Pokemon battles, he can't kill us. We get to leave. But he's not super happy about it. Also, he's keeping the Eternal Tree Sap. And since he's the richest man in Kalos, before leaving, Crisanto says it will expose him to the rest of the country. But Lanto is the most philanthropic and popular man in the world. Nobody's gonna believe that he did anything bad, and if he did, it's because you're the bad guys. Now get the hell out of my house. Now that we're outside of Chateau Lanto, Crisanto can tell us about his sad and tragic backstory, because we already got Melia's. What's my backstory? Is this game my backstory? Apparently, Crisanto grew up super poor, and his mom was super sick. and it was only because of Lanto's scholarship programs that he was able to attend a Pokemon Academy in the first place. So Crisanto feels as though he owes everything to Lanto. So how could Lanto be evil? With this new revelation, he is completely lost and doesn't know what to do. Professor Olivier places her hand on Crisanto's shoulder and just says, "Get over it." Also, since literally everybody's apparently a bad guy, we should all head to Still Life Town and meet up with Mirra, because maybe that alliance doesn't sound like such a bad idea at this point. After doing a bunch of Musketeer missions, we're gonna backtrack and grab a Tyrogue, who we're gonna nickname Lil Mac. And we're also gonna grab our gift Eevee over on Route 8 by finding this lady's mom's scarf, who we're gonna nickname Crystal. Needing to swap out our party, first we're gonna add Waddle Dee and evolve it into a Tinkatuff. And then one more time into Tinkaton. Next up is going to be Glenn, first evolving into Palpitoad. And then one more time into Seismitoad. Actually, on second thought, instead of Glenn, since it's a Ferry Gym next, we're going to add in McCloud, evolving them into Ninetales. We make our way over to Still Life Town to meet up with Mirra, so we can propose a proper alliance. But when Crisanto and Mirra meet eyes, the sweat glistening off his back from him working hard in the fields, Crisanto is completely speechless. So Mirra takes control of the conversation. There's someplace he wants to show us just to the west of town called the Prosperity Sanctuary. And once he takes us there, he'll be able to prove that his goals align with ours. We're going to grab an Absol over at the Prosperity Sanctuary, who we're going to nickname Meta Knight. And after we get to the sealed chamber of the Prosperity Sanctuary, Mirra reveals what he and the Order of the Eternal Tree do exactly. We see a mural of Xerneas, Yveltal, and Zygarde. But we see another fourth mysterious silhouette. Those who master life, death, and balance will be able to call forth an incredible power. A flower of light that will rival the Eternal Tree. The mortal who commits such an affront will face the wrath of Ottertusk, the Eternity Pokemon. For only him do the three powers belong. So it is Mirra's duty as a cleric of the Order of the Eternal Tree to make sure that the power of the Eternal Tree does not fall into the hands of mortals. But Team Azoth must have also seen this message at some point. And we definitely don't want to mess with whoever Ottertusk is. So that settles it. The three of us plus Malia and Olivier should totally become a team. But first, we're gonna have to fight a bunch of zombie druids. And back over in Still Life Town, there's only one more thing left for us to do to solidify this alliance. Pokemon! Mirra starts off with Mawile and I said in Wario. It's gonna go for a Fire Punch and we go for a Yawn. After that, it follows up with a Play Rough and we can start laying down the spikes because, like, duh, of course we're gonna do that. And after we get our 2 layers of spikes down, I'm gonna swap out and send in McCloud while it's still sleeping. We can then go for a Torch Song, which is fantastic that Ninetales learns it in this game, and we can take down Mawile in 1. Next up comes Melodic. And this is making me wish I still had Seismitoad, but let's swap out into Mauser as it goes for a Brine. And on the following turn, we can go for a Thunder Punch on the Melodic, getting it down super low, as it decides to go for a Dragon Pulse this time, getting me down super low, but Melodic gets taken down as well. Kadabra's out next, and I'm going to swap out into Bronto Burt as Kadabra goes for a Shadow Ball, which is going to nail us. So let's swap out again and send in Peppy. It's going to go for another Shadow Ball, which obviously doesn't do anything. It then hits us with a ×4 super effective Focus Blast, and Peppy goes down. You've got to be kidding me, but here's Waddle Dee. It's going to go for a Calm Mind, but that's fine because I'm packing a big hammer. And after I smack this thing, it goes down. Which leads into Absol. It goes for a nice slash, scoring a crit, and we can go for a Play Rough right away, scoring a massive critical hit of our own, grabbing the KO, and defeating Mirra. Mirra leaves us with one more thing. While we are working together against Team Azoth, he wants us to know that they're right about one thing. The noble class here in Kalos and all over the world are like no good. And soon it'll be time for the people to rise up and make their own decisions. But with that, he gives us a mysterious silver coin and leaves. We're going to add Slider into the party to replace Peppy, evolving it first into a Herdier, and then one more time into Stoutland. And now it's time for us to take on Zafra and her fairies. She starts off with Dash Bun and I send in Wario. We're going to do what we always do, is it goes for a charm. That's fine, you can lower my attack. It then goes for a Psychic, scoring a massive critical hit, activating our weakness policy, and we can lay down our first layer of spikes, and then a second one. I'm then going to go for a Poison Jab, doing about 50%, as it continues to sleep, and we can take it down. Next out comes Gormouse. And I absolutely love this regional evolution. And I'm afraid of a Bulldoze here, so we're going to swap out Wario and send in Brunto Burt, as it goes for a Body Slam, scoring a crazy huge hit on us. Holy smokes. It's going to go for another Body Slam, and unfortunately this time it's a crit, and Brunto Burt goes down. I just really wanted to set up a future sight. Okay, I guess let's send in McCloud. And I'm going to go for a Torch Song, doing barely anything to this thing, as it goes for a Body Slam, doing a crazy amount of damage. So we'll swap out and send in Waddle Dee, since I can resist the Body Slams at least, and it still does more than I thought it would, and now I'm paralyzed. Then follows up with a Bulldoze, doing a lot of damage, but we can go for a Colossal Hammer on this thing, finishing off this monster. Next now comes out Creamy. I'm going to swap out a Waddle Dee and send in Mauser, as it decides to go for a Mystical Fire here, which is fine because I punch things for a living. We're then going to go for Raichu's signature ability, which is basically Physical Venom Shot, taking down Alcremie. Vanillix comes in as her final Pokemon, also getting poisoned, which means we can go for our special Venom Punch, taking down Vanillix in 1. And we defeat Zafra. On Route 9, we're going to grab ourselves a Drampa, who we're going to nickname Dragodon. At the end of Route 9, we run into Malia, who's looking to hitch a ride on us with this creepy boat. And where the heck have you been this entire time? You missed the whole thing with Lanto being a bad guy. But there's only one way you're getting on this boat with me, lady, and that's a Pokemon battle. Malia starts off with Floette, and we send in Wario. Because of course we do, we always do. It's going to go for a Charm on us, and we can go for a Yawn before laying down some spikes. She's going to go for a single Giga Drain on us before falling asleep, and we put down 2 layers of spikes. Now we can go for a couple of Amnesias, as it goes for another Giga Drain on us. And even though we're at -2 for our attack, I'm hoping we can do some good damage with a Poison Jab, and we do like a third before she swaps out into Marshana. Assuming I can tank a Psychic move, I'm going to stay in, but it goes for a Side Shock! And I get totally called as Wario goes down. So let's send in McCloud. Melia's gonna go for a Hyper Potion, but we can go for a Hex on this thing, scoring a massive hit, bringing it down quite low. Melia then uses another potion, and we can go for another Hex, and one more takes down the Marshana. Billiden's up next. And we're gonna stay in, going for a Torch Song where we can pick up the Yoko. Floette comes back in. And we're gonna go for another Torch Song, bringing it down quite low, as it then goes for a Cold Water, doing a bit of damage to us, lowering our attack. And with one more Torch Song, we can take out Floette. Eevee comes in as our final Pokemon. And we can go for another stab Torch Song, taking it down in 1. And we defeat Malia. And honestly, how dare you take out Wario? That has been like my entire strategy this game. After the battle, enter Crisanto, who's apparently also catching a ride on this ferry, but he's not a freeloader. He says that we don't want to know what he had to do to get these coins. And with all 3 apprentices reunited, it looks like we can head west to wherever the next place we have to go is. This creepy ferryman then lets us know that his next stop is Amberette Town, where apparently the king is visiting the Leviathan Fort. And Malia, who is incredibly nervous about seeing her daddy, decides to jump into the water. On Route 10, we find a cloth we're going to nickname Crabbers. We're going to add Slippy back into the party because now with the level cap increased, it can ascend into Galarian Greninja, whose signature ability Egg Trick uses a random psychic move when attacking, and whose hidden ability increases evasion when above 75% health. So hopefully coupling this with the Bright Powder means that Slippy isn't gonna get hit. We meet up with Mustache Merlot and the King with Malia over at Leviathan Fort. And the King is both excited and super freaked out that his daughter is standing like 5 feet away from him. Not exactly sure what to say to her daddy, she introduces us as her fiancé, and thought that this occasion was too important not to tell him about. Emilia, I never knew you felt that way about me. But if it means that I'm the future king of Kalos, you got it, lady. The king then asks about Team Azoth, and Mustache Merlot says there's absolutely nothing to worry about. But then, a crash at the door. He was wrong. Because the revolution is now at their gate. Now come on, father-in-law, we gotta get the hell out of here. After fighting our way to the back of Fort Leviathan, the king needs a moment to rest, where he reflects on how his wife would have dealt with this situation so much better than he is right now, and that he's never truly been the same since her passing. But jolting back to reality. But snapping back to reality, we gotta get the heck out of here. Unfortunately, there's a trapdoor that leads to the cave system down below. After we start moving again, we find ourselves in a cave system underneath the fort, but there's nowhere left for us to run. We've been cornered by the revolutionaries. The king goes to accept his fate, but then we feel a surge of energy, like nothing we've ever felt before. And doing a super cool superhero landing, enter Alka, hair billowing in the wind, the revolutionaries chanting her name. The two of them talk for a while and apparently find that they have quite a bit in common. But she needs to fight to make her dream become a reality, and she punches the ground, unleashing the power of the Eternal Tree, bringing a Tyrantrum and an Aurorus back from the grave. We gotta find a way to get the heck out of here. And just when all hope seems lost, her power fades, and so do they. And just in the nick of time, enter Mustache Merlot and his mighty Gogoat, who is packing the most insane level of rock smash you have ever seen. And we can finally make our escape. After making it back outside, Mustache Merlot says he's going to take the king back to the capital so he can properly protect him. And even though Malia and I should probably also go with them, he says we have more important things to do, like get our badges. I don't like the cut of this guy's jib. You've got it, father-in-law. I'll get as many badges as you need me to get. Over on Route 11, we can grab ourselves a regional whalemer, who we're going to nickname Bill. After making it to Cyclops City, we see Lanto and Alka doing their political campaign run, where Lanto is running on a platform that he is just an everyman like everyone else. He puts on his pants one servant at a time, and his hands even got dirty one time when he threw a rock at a child. See, he's just like you. In anything that anybody's heard about experimenting on Pokemon or eternal lives or vampires are all fake news. Then he gives a little wink and a nod, and turns his attention to Alka. If you don't believe him, surely you'll believe such a massive and powerful lady. Getting back to the important things, we go to pay the next region a visit, but apparently she's being accosted by pirates. And enter Captain Loto, who has stolen all of the region's valuables and also her badges. And if we want to get our 5th badge, it looks like we're going to have to head over to Loto's ship and fight him for it there. And now it's going to be time for us to face off against Loto in his pirate Pokemon. Glowitzer and Hunchcrow come in. We send in Glenn and Mauser. Mauser's going to go for a Thunder Punch on the Hunchcrow, bringing it down in just one shot. Glenn can then go for an Ice Punch on Glowitzer, doing like nothing as it fires off an Ice Beam on Mauser, doing quite a bit of damage. Whiscash is up next. And I'm going to swap out a Mauser and send in Slider to get the Intimidate off on Whiscash in Glowitzer, as Glenn goes for a Drain Punch on Whiscash, doing a bit of damage. Then an Aqua Tail on Slider is going to do a little bit, and an Ice Beam is going to do a lot. Slider. I swap out sending in Slippy, and I thought that Noble Form was just wording, not literally a weird little man. And an Earthquake's going to do quite a bit of damage to our side of the field. I'm then going to swap into Waddle Dee as Loto uses a Hyper Potion to heal up Whiscash, and I can go for a Snarl to lower the special attack of that side of the field. Glowitzer then goes for an Ice Beam, doing basically nothing to Waddle Dee as it gets down super low. Loto then uses the second Hyper Potion on Glowitzer. Waddle Dee goes for a Fake Out to stun it, and another Earthquake is gonna come in, doing a lot of damage to Waddle Dee, and Slippy dodges. I can then go for an extra Sentry on the Wishcast, doing quite a bit of damage. Waddle Dee can then go for a Play Rough on Wishcash, getting it down super low as an Aqua Tail unfortunately crits and KOs Waddle Dee. I can then go for an Egg Trick, which is going to take down Wishcash, and then I'm going to follow up with a Psybeam on Glowitzer. With Wishcash going down, we're going to send in Mauser as Wailord comes in. Mauser can go for a ×4 super effective Thunder Punch on Wailord, taking him down in one shot. Slippy then goes for an Egg Trick, taking down Glowitzer. And after setting up a completely useless Psychic Terrain, Glowitzer goes down, and we defeat Loto. Needing to fill out the last slot in our team, we're going to add Thwomp back in and evolve it into Golem. We meet up with the Cat comrades over in the nearby bar, where we discuss our plans for dealing with Team Azoth. Worker Santo asks Malia if there's some sort of super secret underground vault underneath Lumios's palace. Because honestly, there's no real reason to overthrow the king if all they're going to do is make everybody immortal vampires. And Malia says, as a matter of fact, there is. Over 500 years ago, the Dark King Malva destroyed the Eternal Tree. And it's said that there's a super secret underground vault under the palace with whatever it is he found in there. So it looks like our next step in stopping Team Azoth is clear. We need to get to Lumios's palace. Malia wants to save her father, while Crisanto and Mirra want to find a peaceful way to end the revolution and usher in a new era of democracy. But before we do any of that, we've got to go get our next badge because that's totally on the way to Lumio City. On Route 12, we're going to grab ourselves a Berserker, who we're going to nickname Goomba. Over on Route 12, we find Crisanto playing a sad song about revolution and what he must do. He's experienced so much since leaving on this journey, from his first date ever with Professor Olivier to meeting his idol Lanto, to that idol being an evil vampire, and now Mirra, the mysterious man who held his hand in a bar once. He doesn't know what to think of revolution or what his next steps are, but he knows that he's going to figure it out himself. So let's have a Pokemon battle together. Crisanto starts off with Wigglytuff, and I set him a Cloud. And I'm going to go for a Torch Song right away, doing just about 50%, as the Wigglytuff goes for a Hyper Voice, doing a crazy amount of damage to us. But it's not quite enough to activate our Citrus Berry as I go for another Torch Song. And now at +2, we can successfully take it down. Next down is Marowak. And at +2, we can go for another Torch Song, taking down the Marowak in 1. Next out comes Delphox. And if I'm being honest, I was hoping for Goodra, but whatever, we'll send in Thwomp as he tries to go for a Nuzzle. After that, he follows up with a Fire Punch, doing like nothing, and we can go for an Earthquake on the Delphox, taking it down in 1. Finally, in comes Goodra, who I was hoping would have come in earlier, but whatever, we'll swap out, sending in Galen as this thing goes for a Dragon Pulse, doing almost half. He then fires off another Dragon Pulse, getting me down to 39, and I go for an Ice Punch, and I don't do nearly enough. And with no fairies, I don't really know what to do, so I swap out into Slippy, and after I turn into a little boy, Crisanto heals up. The Goodra goes for a Sunny Day for reasons I can't possibly comprehend, and I'm going to go for a Calm Mind. After that, it's going to fire off a Dragon Pulse, which fortunately doesn't do quite a lot of damage to us, and we go for an Egg-Trick doing like nothing, then follow up with a Psybeam doing almost half. It then goes for a Flash Cannon, but fortunately it misses, and we can fire off a Psychic, taking out the Goodra. And we defeat Crisanto. In Old Camphor Town, we're going to grab a Morgrim, who we're going to nickname Kamek. And in the Old Camphor Sewers, we're going to grab ourselves a Parasect, who we're going to nickname Toad. And while fighting our way through Old Camphor Town in the sewers, we find this magnificent vampire hunter, who identifies herself as Belladonna, the regent of Camphor Town. And she's investigating the fact that every wild Pokemon in the area has become affected with the decrepit state, an ailment which is apparently incurable, except if you take it to a Pokemon Center. She then lets us know that if we find any additional information, she'd be more than happy to battle us for a badge later on, and to meet up with her over in their Pokemon Clinic in Camphor Town proper. But not so fast. A Drapion attacks us, and from out the shadows we find this mystery man, who reveals that he is the chief executioner for Team Azoth, Geno. And Lanto wants us dealt with personally. So it looks like we're gonna have to Pokemon battle to not die. Geno starts off with Drapion, and we send in Thwomp. It's gonna go for a double team on the first turn, which is super frustrating, and then I don't hit an Earthquake. After that, it goes for a Night Slash, getting a crit, and we're going to go ahead and set up some Stealth Rocks. On the following turn, it's going to go for another Night Slash, but this time it doesn't crit, and we can go for an Earthquake, picking up the KO on Drapion. Next now comes Houndoom, who's probably going to go for a Dark Pulse, and I don't know if anybody on my team can tank it now that I don't really have a tank, and Glenn does just fine. On the following turn, he's going to go for a Jet Punch, taking the Houndoom out. Next out comes Naganadel, who is going to outspeed us with a Signal Beam, and we can go for an Ice Punch, doing about 70%. He then swaps out Naganadel, sending in a Alolan Slowking. And we can then go for an Ice Punch on this thing, doing just like a little bit. On the following turn, I'm going to change things up, going for a mud shot, getting it down just below half, lowering this thing's already horrible speed as it decides to go for a psychic. I'm then going to swap out a Glenn and send in Slippy, turning into our little boy king, and a psychic's going to come in doing just a little bit to us. I'm then going to go for an egg trick, getting it down into the red, which is then going to have me set up a trick room, which is literally the worst thing that could have possibly happened. Fortunately, it misses our sludge bomb, so when we go for another egg trick, we follow up with a confusion. And after getting hit with a psychic, we turn back into a frog and then take it out with a psychic. Naganadel comes back in, and we can go for a psychic because this thing's faster than us, taking it down. And we defeat Genos, which means he's no longer allowed to assassinate us. Once we do reach the hospice just outside of Camphor Town, we find that Lanto and Team Azoth have already arrived, and Lanto is demanding to see the manager. And by manager, he means Belladonna. And once Lanto makes his way to the manager, he says that he's going to be suing Belladonna for intellectual property rights, because by researching and trying to cure the decrepit state, she's infringing on his patent, which is just like the wildest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. And when Belladonna refuses the court summons, he commands his fat cat to use Body Slam, resulting in everything caving in around them. So I guess we need to get outside so we can help out Belladonna. And outside we run into this dingus again, but you aren't dealing with the average Wolfram anymore. He's leveled up, so we send in Thwomp up against Ariados. It's gonna go for a Shadow Sneak on the first turn, doing like nothing, and I'm gonna set up a Stealth Rock. After that, it goes for a Poison Jab on us, and we can follow up with an Earthquake, scoring a pretty massive hit. After that, Wolfram is gonna use Hyper Potion, and I'm gonna throw a rock at this thing's face, getting it down quite low before he heals up again. So I'm gonna continue throwing my rocks at it until he swaps out into Spidops. So I'm gonna throw a rock at this spider instead, and we're gonna take it way down into the red. And with one more chuck of a rock, Spidops goes down. Braquinid's out next. And I'm gonna swap out Thwomp and send in Mauser as he decides to go for a Leech Life, which I was not expecting. But anyways, we're gonna go for a Thunder Punch, bringing it down into the red, and we're gonna get the poison off, which is fantastic. He then sets up a Sticky Web, and we can take it down on the following turn with a Venostab. Ariados comes back in just to get taken out by said rocks, which leads into Galvantula, who is going to go for a Discharge, which does way more than I thought it would, and we're going to go for our little Toxic Stabby Stab, getting the poison off, which is awesome. I'm then going to swap out Mauser and send in Glenn, as the Sticky Web slows us down, and it goes for a Giga Drain, which is horrible for me. So let's swap out and send McCloud back in, as this thing goes for a Bug Bust this time. It then follows up with a Discharge, and we can fire off a Torch Song, taking out Galvantula. And with that, we've defeated Wolfram once again. And just like last time, he declares, Book Bomb! And off he goes. And after Lanto's Fat Cat gets KO'd by Belladonna, he and the rest of Team Azoth, and rewind it a little bit so you can see the Naganadel. And just when it seems like Lanto and Team Azoth have been taken down, enter the Naganadel, poisoning all of us. Which is not how the rules of Pokemon work. You're not supposed to attack people. And here's Genos again to save the day for Lanto. But they still have one more of our friends to deal with. And Lanto wants to have a little bit of fun with the princess. Lanto turns to Genos, asking if maybe he can show off a little bit of his executioner skills. Genos hesitates for a moment, but Lanto is the one paying the bills. And after summoning 3 Houndooms, which is 2 more Houndooms than he had 5 minutes ago, he commands the doggos to satiate themselves, taking out Floette and leaving Melia in critical condition. And Melia then finds herself in the Soul Stone, unable to move. Is this truly the end for our princess? She sees the crazy old lady one last time. But it turns out it's not the crazy old lady at all. It's her mother. They embrace for the first time as adults. And Queen Griselda tells Melia that her father, no, her kingdom, needs her. She has her father's compassion and her mother's Pokemon skill. And together with us, her fiancé, she'll be one heck of a queen. Griselda then imparts some of her magic into Melia and Floette, and tells her to get up. And she does, erupting with a power completely unknown to any of us before. Her Floette, now AZ's color. You aren't dealing with the average pretty pink princess anymore. And this Floette moonblasts all 3 of those Houndooms straight to Heffel. And guess what, Genos? You're next. And then Lanto runs away. And at this point, Crisanto has strengthened his resolve and Malia has strengthened her body. And I'm just here with my silly hat. When's it gonna be my turn to do something cool? And now it's time for us to take on Belladonna and her noxious poison Pokemon. Belladonna starts off with Glamora and I send in Thwomp. On the first turn, it's gonna go for a Sludge Bomb doing barely anything to us, and we can go for a Stealth Rock. After that, she's gonna go for another Sludge Bomb doing like nothing, and I can go for a Smackdown scoring a pretty good hit, breaking its balloon. And after that, it's gonna go for an Earth Power, getting me down to 33 HP. And we can fire off an Earthquake, taking down Glamora. Next out comes Tentacruel. And I'm gonna swap out Thwomp and send in Mauser to eat up the spikes, as this thing goes for a Hydro Pump, scoring a huge hit on us. And I don't know how I'm not faster than a Tentacruel, but I get knocked down to 18 HP as I go for a Thunder Punch, taking down the Tentacruel. Next out comes Scolipede, who's gonna go for an X-Scissor and take out my Mauser. So in comes McCloud. This thing's gonna go for a Poison Jab, doing almost half, and we're gonna go for a Torch Song, picking up the KO. Turabdula comes in next, which is an absolutely amazing regional evolution, but fortunately an Ice Beam can take it down in one shot. Which leads into Crobat, her final Pokemon, who decides to go for a Cross Poison, getting me down to just 38 HP. And when we fire off an Ice Beam, we can grab the Oko on Crobat as well. And with that, we defeat Belladonna. On our way to Lumio City, we're going to grab a Galarian Farfetch'd, who we're going to nickname Duck Hunt. To fill up the last slot in our party, we're going to give Zero a Dusk Stone and have it evolve into a Ceruledge. Once we reach Lumio City, we run into Malia, and she's so jazzed up to be back in her hometown that she wants to put on a Pokemon battle to remember. Anyways, Floette comes in and we send in Slider, who's going to go for a Psychic right away, doing quite a bit of damage, and we get the special defense drop, but we can fire back with a Thunderfang, doing like literally nothing. After that, it's going to go for a Stab, Moonblast, and Slider goes down. Well, that's not great. Let's send in McCloud. And we can go for a Torch Song, doing a little bit of damage, increasing our special attack as it decides to go for another Moonblast, which we can resist. But unfortunately, it puts our special attack down to normal, but with a crit Torch Song, we're back up to +1. Next out is Chestnut, who is going to outspeed us, going for a Needle Arm, and we can go for another Torch Song, and at +1, it is enough for the Oko. Next up is Flareon, who we should be faster than, and we're going to go for an extra Sentry, and at +2, it still does not do a lot. And this Flareon goes for a Strength, which in this game is Rock type and therefore super effective, KOing McCloud. So let's send in Froggo. The Flareon goes for a Blaze Kick, fortunately missing, and we can go for an Egg Trick, picking up the KO. Marshana comes in last, and we're going to go for an Egg Trick on this thing, doing just a little bit of damage, and then follow up with a Psybeam, getting it to about half as it sets up a Calm Mind. But I'm going to go for a Snarl to lower its special attack back down to normal, as the Marshana tries to go for a Psyshock, but fortunately misses. Malia then heals up, and we can go for more Snarls, lowering its special attack even more. But after I miss and get hit with a Signal Beam, that is a little unfortunate, but now it's down to about half, and I'm going to lose my baby boy form. Now let's go for an Egg Trick before we go for a Stored Power, doing like nothing to this thing as she heals up again, and we can go for another Egg Trick, going for a Kinesis. So let's go for some more Snarls as we continue to lower this thing's special attack, and at this point, even if it did hit us, it probably wouldn't do a lot, and she's rocking Moonlight because of course she is. Why wouldn't she be? Now she's going to continue going for Calm Minds, which is super frustrating, but that's okay because I'll keep on smacking her abilities down until eventually she's way back down into the red once again, but we can take it down. And this is all right before the climax of the game, which is incredibly unfortunate. But after Malia reminisces about how great it is to be back in Lumio City, which is the coolest and most awesome place on Earth, a little street urchin comes and steals her money. And this is precisely why children should be working in factories. But systemic societal issues aside, we should probably help her get her stuff back. Needing to build our party back up, we're going to add in Rob and evolve it first to a Porygon 2, and then one more time into a Porygon Z. I also did a side quest to get a Royal Wig, which allowed me to evolve Crystal into a Royleon. After tracking down this rapscallion to this orphanage, we find Crisanto, who is here to donate all of his money because he's pretty sure he's not going to make it past whatever is about to happen. And there, just off screen, is the little orphan that stole Melia's Pokeballs. But just off screen a little bit more, Alka, who paid this little orphan girl to steal Melia's stuff so that way she could talk to us. And now it's time for Alka to tell us about her super secret sad backstory. Just over 20 years ago, there was a peasant uprising in the city, and King Aster's father, who was king at the time, ordered that the entire district be bombed, leaving poor Alka underneath the rubble, with no one there to save her. For days, she lay there, not knowing if she would ever be able to get up. And after days of waiting, a little imp came to save her, who is now her big burly Grimmsnarl. And since then, it's been her life's mission for the weak to rise up, and for there to never be any pain again. So that's why we all need to become eternal vampires, and also no more king. Shortly after, Chrysanto and I meet Mirra over at a nearby cathedral, where he has a super awesome plan on how to get through the front door of the palace. We're gonna dress up like guards. In the palace, Mustache Merlot looks over the musketeers. King Aster sits alone in his throne, contemplating what's to come. Lanto gets a sip of coffee, relishing in his victory yet to come. Alka, super cool and awesome, standing on top of a building looking out into the distance, like she's the protagonist. The three of us infiltrate the palace, and Mustache Merlot cannot believe how amazing we look. These disguises are a complete and total success, even though Mustache Merlot knows Chrysanto and I very, very well. And just after getting the secret talisman that'll let us in the super secret underground vault, the revolution is at our doorstep. So we all meet back up with the king, Malia and Mustache Merlot, and the three of us reveal ourselves to be the guys that they already know. Chrysanto and Mirra reveal that they are working against Team Azoth but for revolution, and they promise not to let anything happen to him or Malia, so long as we can have a peaceful transition in the days to come. And the king agrees that the most important thing right now is stopping Team Azoth, whatever it takes. And he entrusts us, his soon-to-be son-in-law, with the dispatchment of Lanto and the rest of Team Azoth. But just before we can get to the entrance of the super-secret underground vault, Lanto reveals himself. And even though we try so hard and got so far, in the end, nothing we do matters. And it's now time for us to take on Lanto yet again. He starts off with Frostlass and I send in Crystal. Frostlass lays down some spikes and we are going to go for a Dark Pulse, picking up the KO in just one. Next out comes Lopunny, who's going to hit us with a high jump kick, knocking me down to just 43. And I go for what I thought was a hidden power psychic, but clearly it was rock. So let's swap out Crystal and send in Zero, as it goes for a play rough this time, doing barely anything. After that, it's going to go for a double edge because I didn't realize it was scrappy, and we're going to go for a Bitter Blade, bringing it down way into the red. We're then going to swap out Zero and send in Slippy, as I transform into a little boy, and it goes for a Max Potion. On the following turn, it misses with a high jump kick, doing almost 50% to itself, and we can take it out with a Psychic. Leading into Perugly, who's going to go for a Play Rough but miss, and we're going to go for an Egg Trick as we set up a Future Sight. On the following turn, it tries to go for a Play Rough, but we can KO it with another Psychic. Leading into Gardevoir, who is going to set up a Calm Mind, and we can go ahead and go for an Egg Trick and then set up a Psychic Terrain. After that, it's going to go for an Energy Ball, knocking me down to 14 as we go for another Egg Trick and then put it to sleep. After that, it's going to take the Future Sight. On the off chance Gardevoir wakes up right away, we're going to swap out into Glenn as Lanto uses a Max Potion. Now going for a Liquidation, we can do just over 50%, and one more takes out Gardevoir, which leads into his final Pokemon, Lilligant. And I'm going to swap out a Glenn and send in Rob as it goes for a Giga Drain on us, doing a lot of damage. On the following turn, I'm going to use a Recover, as this time it goes for a Flame Burst, and we'll heal up one more time. Another Giga Drain comes in, and I am in a holding pattern here while I figure out what to do, and it goes for another Giga Drain. So I'm going to go for a Charge, doing barely anything, but it will increase my special defense. After that, we should be able to take a Flame Burst, and we just barely do on 11 HP. But now we're able to successfully heal basically back up to full because of our special defense boost. And then fire off a Tri-Attack, doing a lot of damage. But another Giga Drain is going to bring it down pretty low. And one more KOs Lilligant. And with that, we defeat Lanto. And with Lanto defeated, his Azoth grunts run off. But he's not done with us this time. He's gonna use a knife, like some kind of weirdo who doesn't even have Pokemon. And Crisanto is tired of Lanto's games. Lanto goes to strike, and Crisanto grabs him by the wrist. Because it's exactly like what you said, Lanto. I have an incredibly athletic constitution. And then he just decks him in the face, knocking him out in one shot. And now it's time for us to get ready to face off against the High Knights of King Malvo. After we use the talisman, we find ourselves in an upside-down version of the palace. In barrels of eternal tree sap line the room. Now enter a talking Dusk Noir, who tells us that our next mission is to take on the 4 High Knights of King Malvo, to uncover the secrets of the past so that we may save the future. So let's take one quick look at our team before we face off against the Elite Four. First up, we have Crystal the Royleon, with Hyper Voice, Sludge Bomb, Dark Pulse, and Hidden Power Rock. Next up is Thwomp the Golem, with Brick Break, Earthquake, Stealth Rock, and Smackdown. Slippy the Greninja, with Egg Trick, Snarl, Calm Mind, and Psychic. Glenn the Seismitoad, with Liquidation, Rain Punch, Ice Punch, and Mud Shot. Zero the Ceruledge, with Bitter Blade, Psycho Cut, Shadow Sneak, Swords Dance. And finally, Rob the Porygon Z, with Recover, Load Aggression, Nasty Plot, and Try Attack. First up is going to be High Knight Telio, who sends in a Turtonator and we send in Glenn. I'm going to go for a Mud Shot on the first turn, doing just over half, lowering this thing's already not great speed, and it's going to waste his White Herb, which is fantastic. After that, he goes for a Flash Cannon, and we can follow up with another Mud Shot. Next out comes Ferrothorn, who I assume is going to go for a Power Whip, so let's swap out into Zero so we can take that Power Whip. I'm now going to go for a single Swords Dance to double our attack, as this thing goes for a Curse. And I'm still assuming a ×4 super effective Bitter Blade can KO it, and it does, but we're going to heal basically back up to full, even though it's rocking Iron Barbs and a Rocky Helmet. Next out comes Sylveon. And we're going to go for another +2 Bitter Blade, taking down the Sylveon in one. Which leads into Cloyster, who I don't think has any water moves, so let's go for another Bitter Blade, getting it down quite low, and it doesn't. It goes for an Icicle Spear, which is absolutely ridiculous. It'll obviously hit us all 5 times, but it still only does like a quarter, and between Bitter Blade and our Shell Bell, we're basically back up to full. Which is going to lead into Bastiodon. And once again, we can go for another Bitter Blade, doing just over 60%, but the Rocky Helmet's going to do quite a bit of damage back to us, and this thing goes for a Toxic. But with one more Bitter Blade, we take out Bastiodon, defeating Telio. And every time we beat one of the High Knights, we're going to find out something about the past that we don't quite actually know. When King Malvo originally raided the Eternal Tree to see exactly what was inside, they were expecting to find one of the 3 legendary Kalosian Pokemon. But instead, they found this little fella. But this wasn't an ordinary little fella. This fella could turn into a dude. A very handsome and pretty elf dude. Not knowing what kind of abomination this was, they declared that they should take it back to the castle immediately for questioning, and maybe even experimentation. Next, it's time for us to face off against High Queen Malva. She sends in Zangoose and I send in Zero. It goes for a Swords Dance, and so do I. It's then going to outspeed us with a knockoff, getting me down to 30, getting rid of my Shell Bell, which stinks, but we can go for a +2 Bitter Blade, taking it down in 1 and healing back up just over half. Next out comes Chandelure. And going for a +2 Shadow Sneak, we should be able to OHKO the Chandelure, and we do. Which leads into Alakazam, and once again, a Shadow Sneak grabs the OHKO. Haxorus is out next. And assuming an Earthquake, we're going to swap out into Glenn as it goes for a Dragon Claw, getting a crazy hit off on us. And after that, it goes for a Poison Jab, luckily not KOing us. And we can go for a super effective Ice Punch, getting it down quite low, and we get the Freeze, which means its special attack is now lowered. Which I guess doesn't really matter because it doesn't use that kind of attack, but whatever, we'll swap into Slippy, turning into a little boy, but a Dragon Claw hits us, doing a lot of damage. And we'll swap out, sending in Rob as it goes for another Dragon Claw, getting us down below half, but fortunately it goes down to the Frostbite. Drapion comes in as her final Pokemon. And we're going to go for a Recover, healing back up as it goes for an X-Scissor. We're then going to heal up again as I try to figure out what the heck I'm supposed to do here, and it crits us on a cross poison. And it crits us again, which honestly is kind of bonkers. But once it finally doesn't, we are going to go for a stab adaptability boosted tri-attack, getting it down super low. Unfortunately, now it's paralyzed. So after we tank another cross poison, we can take it down with a tri-attack, and we defeat Drapion. Diving back into the past again, the mysterious Pokemon man introduces himself as simply Ori. He also reveals he's part of a race known simply as the United, and he is from a time where Pokemon and humans were once the same species. A long time ago, his race came from space and landed here because it was super cool. And while his people had landed on many planets before, they particularly liked this one. And after a while, a choice needed to be made. Each United had to choose whether or not to become a human or to become a Pokemon. And those lines of evolution continue to diverge until we are where we are today. Some high-ranking United, however, like himself, were able to maintain the ability to transform between those two forms. Now it's time for us to take on High Priestess Trenna. She sends in Togekiss, and once again we send in Zero. We're going to get Air Slash, but now we're going to start stacking up Swords Dances, as now we're down just below half. And at +4 we're knocked down super low, but we can pick up the Yoko and heal basically back up to full between the Shell Bell and the Bitter Blade. Next down is Gliscor, who is going to outspeed us with an Earthquake, getting me down to 67. But once again, we can grab the Yoko. Up next is Garganacl. And we're going to go for a Psycho Cut, doing about 50% as it goes for a Salt Cure. So switching things up for the Stab Bitter Blade will finish it off, healing back up to full again. Snorlax is out next, and I don't know if it has thick fat or not, but it goes down in 1 regardless. Which leads into her final Pokemon, Breloom, who we outspeed with 1 more Bitter Blade, taking it down. And we defeat Lady Drakenna. Back in the past again, King Malvo asks Ori about the Eternal Tree and its origin. To which Ori replies that it's actually their spaceship that brought them here in the first place. As for its power source, it is an energy that is capable of modifying the laws of reality, for things such as day and night, or even life and death itself. King Malvo then demands that Ori write down the formula for this artifact so he may research it himself. Ori says they wouldn't be able to understand the calculations for at least several hundred more years, but of course, he'll write it down for the king. And now it's time for us to take on Narcisso, the final High Knight. He starts with Gengar, but we all know that it's not really a Gengar, it's a dirty Zoric trick. And after I lay down some Stealth Rocks, I am going to chuck a rock at this thing after tanking 2 different Dark Pulses. Now realizing I probably should have put Florges in my party, we're going to swap into Crystal so we can tank another Dark Pulse. And after it goes for another one, we can finish it off with a Hyper Voice. Next out comes Clefable, and we can outspeed it going for a super effective Sludge Bomb, taking it down in 1, leading into Toadstool, who's going to set up a layer of Toxic Spikes, but we can go for a Sludge Bomb doing quite a bit of damage, but unfortunately this thing's holding an eject button, so Rob gets forced in. We can then outspeed with a Tri-Attack, taking down the Toadstool. Out next comes Gengar, and we're going to go ahead and go for a Charge Aggression, getting it down quite low and also increasing our special defense as it fires off a Thunderbolt. I don't know why, but we can go for another charge, taking it down. Next out comes Typhlosion, and I'm going to use this opportunity to heal up with a Recover as it goes for a Calm Mind. We're now going to do about 2/3 as it unfortunately has Berserk active. And a Flamethrower is going to knock us down to about 1/3, but luckily we can take it down with 1 more hit. And we defeat Narcisso. Our final vision shows Ori and King Malvo in the garden. And during his time here, Ori has come to a simple conclusion. While humans are an interesting species, they're also highly destructive and volatile, and the world would be better off without them. So he thinks it's about time that maybe he leaves the palace and returns to the Eternal Tree. And when he gets there, maybe he'll rewrite the laws of reality to remove humanity from the equation. Because ultimately it doesn't matter. Even if he regrets it, he'll just make new humans later. And for the sake of all of humanity, King Malvo strikes Ori with his sword. But if you think a simple sword can hurt a legendary Pokemon, you're a silly goose. And after defeating all 4 High Knights, our reward, this book, which 100% contains the formula for the Eternal Tree. And even though we're the ones with the super secret book and the super secret talisman, apparently that doesn't matter to Alka, because she's busting in, and she's gonna take that book from us. But in a crazy big brain move, while we barely hold on against this Grimmsnarl's onslaught, Chrysanto orders his Wigglytuff to mega kick the container of eternal tree sap, infecting Alka with the decrepit state. Now all she needs to do is visit a Pokemon Center to have it cured, but other than that, there is no cure. And this'll buy us just enough time to get the heck out of here. Back in the real world, we find Malia in a panicked state. We need to get back to the throne room, fast. And then, Octillery comes in, Octazooking everybody. And we dropped our super secret book. But then Malia moonblasts the crap out of that damn peasant and its Octillery, and we need to get moving as quickly as possible. But as we rush out of the room to do exactly what Malia asked us to do, she notices this really neat-looking book on the floor. And she decides that she'll keep it for herself. Back in the throne room, we find King Aster, knelt beside his best friend, Mustache Merlot, that glorious head of hair, that magnificent mustache. The captain has fallen. King Aster, overcome with grief, summons his Gyarados. He declares that there will be no more suffering. But his plan to end suffering is literally the exact opposite of Team Azoth. He declares that Gyarados use Earthquake to bring down the entire palace, stopping Team Azoth, the Revolutionaries, and his cursed bloodline all in one fell swoop. So if we're going to put a stop to this calamity, it looks like we're going to have to face off against Zafra. Gyarados comes in and I'm going to send in Rob. And we're going to go ahead and go for our little charge move to KO the Gyarados in one shot and raise up our special defense. Next up comes Florges. And while we have the boosted special defense, I'm going to go ahead and go for a Nasty Plot as it goes for a Giga Drain. And on the following turn, we're going to go for a Stab Tri Attack, scoring a massive hit, getting it down super low. It's going to go for another Draining Kiss before we can go for one more Tri Attack, KOing Florges. Royleon comes in last. And once again, we're going to go for a +2 Tri Attack on the Royleon, KOing it in one as well. And with that, we've defeated Aster Zephyr. The king then calms down, removing his crown and tossing the Pokeballs on the ground, surrendering. And just when King Aster feels as though all is lost, Melia's Floette returns to his side, revealing it's his dead wife. Which I'm going to throw it out there makes the whole AZ Floette story like 5,000 times more interesting. And with renewed vigor, and removing part of his shirt, just like Alka, it looks like King Aster Zephyr is not going down without a fight. And he summons the same cool blue power Melia did like 10 minutes ago, and we're thrown outside into the garden. In descending from upon high, the King and Queen of Kalos will be our final challenge. So let's do this. The royal couple sends in a Golurk and we send in Rob. I'm immediately going to swap out and send in Glenn as it goes for a Hammer Arm, which is going to score a massive critical hit. Now that we're faster, we can go for a Liquidation on the Golurk, getting it down super low as another Hammer Arm KOs Glenn. But the Life Orb will also KO the Golurk. I'm going to go ahead and send in Rob as he sends in Gyarados next. And once again, we can go for a ×4 super effective chargey thingamadoo, but it's holding a Wiccan Berry this time, so we don't get the KO. And all Gyarados does is go for a Dragon Dance. Aster then uses a full restore, and I can go for a Tri Attack, and I definitely should have gone for my electric move again, because we only do half this time. But we are still faster even after a Dragon Dance, so Gyarados goes down after another Tri Attack. Next out comes Torkoal. And I'm going to go ahead and go for another Zippy Zappy, increasing our special defense once again. And the Torkoal is going to go for a Sludge Bomb, which we can tank really well. And we can finish it off after one more hit. Out next is Florges. And because of the power of friendship, we are going to bear witness to Mega Florges. But you silly goose, it's water. But we're going to get it down super low on the first turn. And Mega Florges is going to go for a Moonblast. But with our increased special defense, it does like nothing. And King Aster is going to go ahead and heal up on the following turn, and we can go for another huge hit, bringing this thing down even lower. And with one more, we can take down Mega Florges. Next up comes Royleon. And just so I can keep my special defense up, we're going to keep on going for our little Zippy Zap move, taking it down in one shot. Digivolf comes in as their final Pokemon. And once again, we can go for our fancy electric move, grabbing the Yoko, and Rob absolutely annihilates the King and Queen of Kalos. With the King and Queen defeated, Queen Roselda fades away back into the afterlife, and the King collapses after using up all that fancy magic. And without the King and Mustache Merlot, the Revolutionaries are declaring their victory. Mirra advises Malia to take her father and leave through the secret passage in the throne room, and to do their best to stay under the radar. Malia agrees, and as far as anybody else is concerned, the king fell heroically during the battle, destroying Team Azoth for the good people. And it looks like the three of us have some work to do. Over the next couple of weeks, Mirra, Crisanto, and I help transition the revolution into an actual functioning government, while Malia and her father retreat to the mountains. And in their seclusion, King Aster has some very interesting reading material. A few weeks later, I meet up with Mirra, and together we're heading to Northern Kalos to negotiate with the rest of the regions to surrender. And the two of us toast to the best that Chateau Merlot has to offer. But my vision turns hazy. Something's wrong, and Mirra reveals what his plan was all along. He wants to know where the book is. He knows it's what was recovered in the basement, and he needs it for his plans. He forces us outside and declares that we've been conspiring with the king behind our backs. And I was right. This entire game was our super sad backstory. And it's only just beginning. In appearing beside Mirra, Ori. And it all becomes incredibly clear. The Order of the Eternal Tree obviously serves the Eternal Tree. And the Master of the Eternal Tree is the Pokemon known as Aratask. And their plan to destroy all of humanity has only just begun. And that, everybody, is how I beat a hardcore Nuzlocke of Pokemon Z. And this is only the first half of the game, with the second half of the game hopefully coming out later this year. If you liked the video and you made it this far and you're not subscribed yet, then what the heck are you doing? Make sure you hit that button down below. You know you want to. And let me know what other fan games, ROM hacks, and even vanilla challenges you'd like to see me do in the future. But as always, I'll catch you all in the next video. See ya!